So we've done the journey method and we've done the PEG system. They're great. They're two great, very formal methods of building memory and remembering things for a good period of time. What I'd also like to do is just give you some general memory tips that you can do and you can incorporate into your activities to learn better and to remember more and for longer, really. Now, some of these you have to really put more effort into, and some of those, they're kind of just begin to fall into natural behaviour. So chunking in memory is quite a good thing to do. Now, they do say that we remember 7 plus minus 2 things at any one time. And what that means is basically we can remember between 5 and 9 objects at one point in time. So 7 obviously is the average. What this means is if you think of a telephone number, now a telephone number can be made up of 7, 8, 9 digits, really, but you don't remember 7, 8, 9 digits. You remember 3 or 2 or even 1 if you're very good at it, because what you do is you chunk that phone number up. So you'll remember, say, 0127 486 5931 or 0845 458 459. So that's broken down into chunks of 3 chunks, which saves you the effort of saving the 7 words, because then you need to remember whose number that is or what that number's for. So again, if you had 7 or 8 numbers and you just remembered each number individually, you'd run out of space, you'd run out of repetition. But you chunk it down into 2, 3 chunks, and then you can remember the name, why you need to use it, where you need to use it, and things like that. So chunking, put things together, make things groups. So again, with people and with friends, you can group them into a chunk. So you can have a team. And if you remember a football team, if you're a sports fan and you know a football team well, you'll remember all 11 players as part of that team. But if they were separate, you may not remember them so well because they're not chunked down. Repetition is another key aspect of memory. It's the key, in my opinion, because it's practice makes perfect. The more things you do in activity, the more things you hear in activity, the more times you see it or read it or are involved in it, the more likelihood it will become a long-term memory. Now, I first learned accelerated learning to do my studies, to do some professional qualifications. And one of the ways I learned was surely just through repetition. I read my the key course books probably about 10 times minimum during a 3-month period, which was some going, but I used my power reading techniques, which you can also do in this course. But repetition, it builds that confidence, it builds that recognition by doing it many times. It's like when you see your friends, the more times you see them, the less you have to remember their name or who their friends are and who their family are, because you see them and you recognize them through repetition. Similar to repetition, we've got practice. As I said a minute ago, practice makes perfect, and it really does. Especially if you're not very good at something. If you're not good at it, don't give up at it. Practice. People who play the guitar didn't just pick it up and learn it in one instance. They practiced and they learnt it. And what that practice does, it builds muscle memory and it builds memory. And so it becomes an unconscious act. When you see a musician on stage or you see a band at a concert and they're all playing their instruments and singing and doing multiple things at once, that's because they've practiced. That's because they have created such strong memory they don't even need to think about it. And that leads to showing. If you show people what you know, if you show someone how to do something, you're not only remembering it, but you're proving it. And that's a great way of creating really strong long-term memory bonds. Teaching someone an activity, or even just writing it down, or teaching yourself. Nowadays, we have video cameras on our mobile phones, so you can record yourself running through a list of 10 healthy brain foods if you want, or going over the 10 scientists. You can record yourself just talking to a mirror if you want to, but you're showing that knowledge, you're showing that ability and capability. So yeah, being a show off is not really a great thing, but showing off your skills and competencies is a very good way of creating that long-term memory. I'm going to end the memory tips section with one of my. I've got lots of favourites, and I keep saying this is one of my favourites, but this truly is. And it's flashcards. We use them a lot for small children, especially at primary school, where we have the word, like a word on one side and a picture on the other. Now, again, when I was doing my professional qualifications, one thing that I did was I had flashcards, and you can buy index cards from a stationery shop, or you can make your own by cutting them out of paper, about maybe 2 inches by 3 inches, little rectangular cards that you can fit in your pocket and carry around with you. Now, it's important that they're portable, because at one point I had about 100 cards on me at any one time, and I would use coloured pens, multicoloured pens, to put the main notes in, the main points in. And what I do is I'd write questions on the one side and answers on the other, or I'd draw charts out, or I'd just put keywords or key phrases down. And whenever I was waiting for a bus or I had 5 minutes to spare, I would just pick half a dozen or a dozen flashcards out of my pocket, and I would just reread them and go over them and test myself and ask myself the questions that was on those cards. That is an act of repetition. It's an act of practicing. It's an act of showing, because you're showing yourself those things. So you're using multiple memory skills to engage that memory, and by engaging those memories, they become long-term memories, so they move from short-term to long-term. And again, with flashcards, you can chunk information into groups, so you can have the 10 scientists on one card, or the 10 brain foods on one card, or you could have 5 scientists on the one card and 5 on another, so that you can start chunking them down into groups. So instead of 10 individual people, it's 5 people on one card, or 10 people on one card, so they're chunked down. So there are lots of activities that you can do very simply, very cheaply, and very effectively to boost your memory. And I'll just go over those for one final time, because repetition is very important. And again, spend 10 minutes a day doing these activities, and your memories will grow and your abilities will expand. So, chunking. Group your objects, group the things that you need to remember into chunks of 3, 4, 5 at a time. Then repetition, go over the thing over and over again. Practice makes perfect. Watch children, they will amuse themselves for hours doing the same activity, and they don't realize that the repetition and the practice is what's making them learn. They're just having fun and just figuring it out. It's only when we get older that we think that we should be able to do things quickly and easily. Show someone, show yourself, show a friend, show a member of your family, show a stranger, and write it all down in flashcards. You can incorporate all the memory techniques into flashcards. Carry a dozen, 2 dozen flashcards with you at all times, even if they're not on a particular subject, if it's just things you'd like to remember for fun. Carry some flashcards. Whenever you've got 5 minutes, don't play on your mobile phone, don't tweet and chat with your friends. Get your flashcards out of your pocket, spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes that you could be doing nothing, and remember things, learn things, and from that, knowledge will grow and your ability will amaze you. And you will find that you're well on your way to having a true superhuman memory.